Thank you guys so much for joining Tyromper's No Limit Podcast, episode 17. You guys know I'm fired up today. We are especially fired up. We got the man, the myth, the legend. We got the man with the fantastic beard on the podcast today. This is a man that's making the world a more beautiful place every single day. This is a man that has taken the Twitter world by storm with his incredible threads and writing. This is a man that recently quit his job to work from home, be around his family more, and pursue his passions and help others. This is a man that I've had the pleasure of hanging out with and getting to know on our last retreat. This is a man that I love so much and admire so much and learn from so much. Welcome to the pod, Mr. Timothy Reeves. Thanks for coming on today, brother.
What's up, man? Impressive intro there. Love it.
You know me, man. I like to be high energy, brother. Well, thanks for coming on, man. It's awesome getting to know you in real life and your story. I think a lot of people that follow me probably follow you as well. But could you give people kind of a little 2-minute introduction about yourself that might not know you?
Oh, shoot. An intro. Yeah. So I worked various different jobs, got married when I was, I guess, pretty young, 21. Always wanted to get married and have kids and start a family. So when I found the right woman, I wifed her as quick as I could, and then after that, started having kids and getting into the family life. And then eventually kind of like worked my way, like, as you grow and mature and learn, like my paradigm shift, like for a while, I just wanted to be the top of the industry that I was working in. And it's kind of like that mentality of just like climbing the ladder, just like, I want to be the best of anywhere I can be, and that took a pretty big toll on my family. I mean, certainly I was never like the best of anything that I did, but that desire took me away from the family a lot. And it took a toll on my wife. It took a toll on my kids, and this was before I ever got on Twitter and started using Twitter regularly. Then when I got on Twitter, I found out like, holy moly, you can actually work by yourself and make enough money to sustain your family. You can develop a skill on your own, and you don't have to work for a company. You don't have to work for somebody else. You can work on your own. So I was like, well, let's do that, So just learned how to write. I generally was a better communicator than most of my peers, all the jobs I worked, my skill set was communication, whether it's speaking or writing. So I was like, let's see if we can monetize this. And here we are. Eventually I just said, you know what, forget it. I'm going to quit my job. This was like COVID, shortly after COVID started happening. And I was really concerned that my company was going to start mandating vaccinations, which I didn't want to be a part of. And there's other things with my job where I was like, you know what, now's the time to go. I can see my kids more often, because I was working crazy hours, and it was just terrible. Didn't want to do it anymore. So left the job, left the company, and here we are.
That's awesome, brother. That's so cool, man. Well, congratulations, and a lot to unpack there. I can certainly relate. Where do you think it's almost sort of programmed in society as men? We find validation from work. And I know I was like that when I kind of left poker and got my first job at the bank. I almost found a lot of self-worth in what my boss was telling me, my boss's boss. Could I climb this ladder? Could I keep working up? And it took me away from home so much, to the point where my daughter was crying some of the days when I was leaving, saying, Daddy, when are you going to be home? And I'm like, for dinner, and then I'll put you to bed. And that's when I'm going to see you today, and I realized that wasn't acceptable for me in my life. So I tried to find a way out. Can you kind of talk around about your process around that?
For sure, man. So, okay. I believe that God designed us to work, like if you look at the scripture, Adam and Eve were working in the garden before the fall, right? Before God kicks them out of the garden, they were working. They were maintaining the garden. They were naming the animals. So I think that God has programmed us to work. Like that's a part of our nature and a part of what we're supposed to be doing. So I think it's just kind of like a natural inkling that once we get into whatever we're doing, we want to be the best at what we're doing, or we want to work hard. Like we're influenced by our peers, right? But that has been destroyed, I think, by our society, in that our society has told us what's most valuable, right? Society has told us from the get-go, you go to school, and what do they say? What do you want to be when you grow up? right? That's what they ask you. That's what they ask you. They don't talk about being a father and being a man. They don't talk to women about, oh, what does it mean to actually be a woman? What is femininity, right? What is masculinity? How is that going to play out? How is it going to be that you're going to be the best husband or the best father? How is it that you're going to be the best wife or the best mother? Nope. It's society has programmed us to find validation in the things that we do. So, I mean, from a young age, that's what it is. Like, develop a skill, get into that industry, and then use that skill to monetize and make money. And then you're successful, right? You're successful because you've made enough money, and you pay as few taxes as possible, right? That's another mark. So you kind of climb that ladder, and then, that's the status symbol. If you say, hey, I don't want to make that much money, I want to spend more time with our family, the world's like, you're crazy. What are you talking about? You don't want the best car. You don't want the best house. You don't want to buy your wife diamond rings, right? There's like a dichotomy, right? Where it's kind of like you're pigeonholed into someone who doesn't like money or doesn't want money or see money as valuable. And some even pitch it as being evil. But I think it's ultimately putting money and status in the right place, and we can see what's happened in our society once we've devalued the family, right? We've devalued the family. And now people just look at life as, well, how can I fulfill myself, instead of how can I serve my wife? How can I serve my kids? Those are, how can I serve the company that I'm working with, right? Yeah. So I think that's kind of like where we're at. And I don't know, I don't want to read too much into like how we got here, but this is where we are.
Yeah, I definitely, it's funny, one point there's, when men meet each other, and when I often meet new dads, when I'm picking my daughter up from school or whatnot, the first question everybody asks is, what do you do? And it's almost like they're assigning some kind of value to you there. Oh, you're a lawyer. Oh, you're a doctor. Oh, you're this, you're that, and it's just, that is programmed in us from a young age. If you drive a nice car, you have that, if I brought my wife diamonds, she'd smack me and say, take them back, but it is, most of society wants that stuff. So was there a moment for you where you and your wife kind of decided, hey, we don't want to chase stuff. We want to chase time, and we want to chase this family dynamic more? Did you guys have like an intentional decision around that, or what kind of led you to where you are now?
Yeah. So we definitely did. I've never been in a position where I made like a ton of money. So to be fair, I wasn't in like this position where I was making like $400,000 a year. And I was like, okay, I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to go on my own to make less money, So that was actually part of the decision making for us, was we weren't making that much money. And it might sound weird, but we weren't making that much money. So it wasn't that hard to recoup that money, right? Like, if we were already living on $400,000 a year, it would be more difficult for me to leave and then drop it down to $100,000 a year, right? Or $80,000 a year, or whatever it may be. So for us, that was actually part of what we said was, hey, we're already not making that much money. So this is a great time because we can recoup not making that much money pretty quickly on our own. But it was less about the actual money and like pursuing things, because my wife and I, we haven't ever been in a position where we're like, oh man, we just want to have the best of everything, like most of the clothes we have are clothes we've had for a long time, right? We don't buy stuff on credit. Most of the furniture we have, we were given to us. The decision was less about money and more about the time to spend with the family, right? So for us, that was the decision. When I talked to my wife, I was like, hey, look how many hours I work every single week for this company. Okay, look how much money we're getting, and look how much I don't see you guys, right? Like, I come home and I barely make it home in time for dinner sometimes. I'm so tired that I basically fall asleep putting my kids to bed. And then I wake up and I'm gone before they're there in the morning, right? And it's like, is this the life that I want to live with my kids? No. Is this a life I want to have with my family? No, it's not. Like, how can I spend more time with my kids? Like, that was really the decision. The money was there, like, okay, we need to figure out a way to recoup the money we're making. But it wasn't really for us a choice of money versus family. It was really time. It was a matter of time, right? Like working from home and being at home now. The best part is I'm here when my kids come home from school, right? And I go out and jump on the trampoline and I play with them and I sit down and have a snack with them, talk with them while they're having a snack, right? This was the decision. Like we could, I mean, probably our 10 years of, or well, 11 years of marriage now, we took like 3 vacations with the family. And it's like, I just couldn't get time off of work to make that happen, you know? And so now I pretty much write for a living. And so I write on my laptop and I take my laptop where we go, right? So it's not like I get a vacation where I just sit down and do nothing, but we get to go to a different location and I work in the morning, hang out with the family in the afternoon, or I hang out with the family in the morning, work with the kids in the afternoon, play with the kids in the afternoon, but I get to pick because I'm now my own boss, right? There was a time, and it was through COVID when I was like just dog tired, man, just worn out, and then learned how to monetize writing. Yep.
Good for you, man. And I know Twitter community is big into that. Everybody builds one another up. Everybody wants to help. But I think getting back to one point you made there that is so critical is that money is just simply, it's neither evil nor good. It's how you use it, right? And it's just, to me, a tool. And I talk to people about this a lot, is like, look, for me, the most valuable thing is what you said. I get to be home with my kids. Right before this podcast, I was playing with them. We were doing peekaboo games, laughing, having a great time. After this, man, we're going to go to the park and play. I can work from anywhere now. Last Monday, we just up and took our daughter on a little trip to the ocean, and I didn't have to ask for time off, and I remember messaging a couple of my buddies that are entrepreneurs too, and saying, every man should have this, the ability to not have to ask another man for time off to go somewhere and spend a great day with his family, Yep. And I feel like that's the ultimate aspiration. Not really. I don't care what kind of car I drive. I don't care about this stuff. I got hand-me-down shirts. We got most of our furniture, man, is used. We buy it used and restore it. And that stuff doesn't make me happy, but being around the people I love really makes me happy, man. It seems like you really figured that out, man. And
yep. Yeah, dude, that's a really big thing, Oh man, asking for time off of work and just being micromanaged by people. Oh, dude, man. And then even then, I don't know, maybe you've experienced this, but when I would take time off of work, they would still call me sometimes when I'm on vacation, and it's like, sure, man. What the heck? I can't escape this, So, sure. But I'm not really interested in chasing the American dream if it means I have to ditch my family in order to make that happen, Yep. So that freedom is huge, that freedom is huge. And even simple stuff like my son, he had a really hard morning. And if I was working my old job, like I'd have to call my boss and say, hey, I'm running late. Sorry, and then you get a mark, oh, you showed up late. And like this morning, I hung out with my son and I helped him out. And I tried to do the best I can to help him with having a hard morning because I'm in charge of my time.
Man, I absolutely love that, man. Yeah, just being there for your kids. You're one thing that I loved about you, Reeves, right away from, I could tell, we knew each other from Twitter, but then when we got to meet in real life and spend those few days together, man, like every time you speak, I listen because you're a man. I feel like you speak with a lot of authority and you believe so deeply what you say. Mm-hmm. So you talk a little bit about fatherhood, the importance of that to you, the importance of family and this masculinity and you leading your family, because you're a man that I admire and I look up to a lot for that, man. Mm-hmm. So can you kind of talk on that for a little bit?
Yeah. So, I talk about it on Twitter a lot, that the family is the bedrock of society. The family is the bedrock of the world that we live in. Right. And our family is our future. Our family is basically like the linchpin, right? Like you see what happens when a generation doesn't have fathers. Right. You see what happens. We're living through it. Right. You see what happens when husbands and wives don't love each other and the family gets destroyed. So in a way, the ideal scenario that I see is like your family is built upon Christ and then our society is built upon the family, and like that would be the structure that it would go. But kids, we make as parents, we make things priority in their life, right? Like we help them to see the world the way that they should see the world. And we help them to put on the appropriate filters to see things for good and evil, right? We help them to put on the appropriate filters to see the world the way it really should be seen. And the kids can't do that on their own, right? So you have to have the father who's there. And I mean, just by God's design, the father's not enough, right? You need the nurturing mother. You need the balance of the two in order to make it happen. So while the father is the leader of the family, the father is the patriarch of the family, you know, he has his own responsibilities. The mom is absolutely necessary. And this is what's so destructive. You remove the mom or the dad, and you remove the balance that the kids need, right? Your daughter needs a mom and a dad. This unfortunately isn't common, right? Like I remember posting something about fathers being necessary or something on Twitter, and someone had said, 2 loving parents is good enough. Well, that's not necessarily the case, because you see what happens when the dad is removed, and now maybe it's mom and would be like grandma, right? That are replaced. And that's not good enough, because the way that it's designed, kids look up to their father. The father sets that example. Like you have to be really careful with the words that you speak, because your kids take them as literal, right? Like you're the one that's instructing and leading the family, and both of those are there. So for me, that's one of the reasons that I started doing, writing my books, was because I believe that we can change the world by changing the family, right? So the motto that I say all the time is, my goal is to make the world beautiful by making families beautiful. And when you can make families beautiful again, that's the linchpin to making the world and society beautiful. Like you're going to bring society back into balance. So it's our job to pass along our values, to pass along our traditions with our kids. And you can't do that if you're not there. You can't do that if you're not there, you know?
It's so true, man.
And unfortunately, like, I even have one of my good friends, you know, him and his wife, they both work full-time jobs, and they both see their kids. They both see their son for about 2 hours a day, an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening. So it's like, what's happening to this kid, man? He doesn't get connection with his parents, right? I mean, from a very young age, he hasn't have connection with his parents. He's at daycare all the time. And that's who's leading him, right? The women at the daycare are the ones who are training him and instilling values, even though they're not intentionally instilling values, right? Like she didn't get to potty train her own son. The daycare potty trained her son. So you don't even have that connection, and you lose like the love of the family, you know? Like so many memories I have with my wife potty training our kids. Even though I wasn't there as much as I could be, I got to live through it vicariously through my wife calling me, right? And telling me, hey, this is what happened. This is what we did. Sending me videos. He's going into the bathroom, you know? Like the joy of the family itself, you know, that's lost when the family gets destroyed. And I think besides God himself, we should find some of the most joy in our life in our family itself, right? I should find some of the most joy in my life in my wife and in my kids, right? My ultimate joy is found in God himself. But here on this earth, movies, they don't matter to me. I don't look for joy in movies, right? I look for joy in making my wife happy and making her smile and making her laugh and giving my kids the best day that they could possibly have, right? Giving my kids a day that they remember, that they talk about, right? That video games don't do that. Movies don't do that, right? And unfortunately, I think with the collapse of the family, now you get these people, they're not looking for joy in their spouse, right? They're looking for joy in hooking up with women all the time, or in alcohol, or in drugs, right? And they're finding, not only do they not have their joy in God, but now they don't even have their joy in their family. So it's broadened. They got to find it somewhere else. So to me, it's key. The family's cornerstone of society. And when it falls, society falls.
I definitely agree with so much of that you said, man. And it's, I think some people will push back on that and say, well, I got to make a living. I got to work 10 hours a day to pay bills, to do this or that. And, what would your response be to that? Because I know what I say to a lot of those people is, well, look around your home. Do you need to drive a $35,000 car? Do you need to drive, do you need to have $10,000 chandelier? Do you need to do some of these things you do? Or could you scale that back to be home more? It's all about your priorities and where they go. But do you get pushback like that too from people?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, because, people have an unrealistic standard of living. That's a big part of it. Like, I was talking to this girl on Twitter who told me, no man should get married no man should have kids if he's not making $100,000 a year.
I've heard people
I'm like, what? No, that's not the way it is. Like your priorities are wrong, And this was what happened when my wife and I got married. There were people in our lives who told us, don't get married. You don't make enough money. You need to make more money. And I'm like, no, this marriage is more important to me than the amount of money. I'm happy to have hand-me-down stuff, and have an amazing wife, right? And so you get what your priorities are, right? That's the way that I see it. So yes, I mean, some people, they're barely making ends meet, and they're working, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, whatever it may be. But this is the thing, you're only stuck there as long as you want to be stuck there, because you can figure out a way out. And if you want to do it, you will. And if you're married and you have a good wife and you tell her, this is what I want to do, she will probably help you. She'll probably help you get there, In fact, when I quit my job, my wife picked up photography. Like, I saw that she had a skill and I said, hey, babe, I think that you could make some money doing photography. You're really good at this naturally. And she was like, okay, cool. Let me see what I can do. So we bought her a camera. She started watching YouTube videos and developing the skill. And, now she goes out about $200 a photo shoot, which is awesome. More money per day than I was making at my old job, So it's not just, I'm not doing it on my own. My wife is there, right? And my wife, her photography doesn't like take over her life where she's no longer a mom, but she makes some money from doing it and it helps, right? A year ago, I never would have thought that this would be the case. I never would have thought that my wife is making money doing photography, right? Well, she gets clients from Instagram because she posts her stuff on Instagram and people see it and they're like, hey, can you come out and do a photo shoot? And after she did 5 or 6 photo shoots, the word of mouth went, and there it was. So, and this is the thing, everybody has a skill. And if you don't have a skill that you can monetize, you can develop a skill, So I do get the people say like, hey, I'm working long hours. You know what? In order for me to transition this, I had to work more hours than just my job, because I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I didn't have to be to work at 6, and I would write from 3 to 5:30, right? 2.5 hours I would write every day in order to help develop this skill so that I could then monetize it. So did it take sacrifice? Yes, it took sacrifice. Did it happen just by showing up to work every day and following my 9-to-5 job? No, it didn't. I had to work, and all of that sacrifice is worth it to be where I am now.
That's right.
I mean, that's it. So I had to prioritize, right? And for those months that I was doing that, I was tired, and it seemed like I was taking less time away from my family. And it was like, is this worth it? Is it going to be worth it? But when I turned when I gave my keys to my truck back to my manager, I'm like, this is an awesome feeling. Driving out of the parking lot going, I don't answer to anybody anymore. I answer to myself and I answer to God. And it was worth all the sacrifice. That's awesome. Yeah, it might take sacrifice to get there, and it might show up in a way that you don't plan.
That's such a great point, man. A couple of things I want to touch on there is number one, nothing comes for free. And I love how you said that. You're waking up at 3:30, developing your craft. I was getting up at 5 to train and develop client stuff and work any free minute and leverage every free minute I had at my 9-to-5. After my family went to bed, I'd work on my stuff for a couple hours every night for years before I got to get out of my bank and create different revenue streams and things like that. So there is a level of sacrifice. And then also I want to touch on what you said with, your wife picking up photography. And I always say, dude, me and my wife, we're just a team. We're a unit. I couldn't accomplish anything without her. And I know me and you talk similar to this. You just cherish your wife. It's like coming out of your eyes, man. The moment I met you, how much you love her. You guys have been together now, you said 11 years. Mm-hmm. You kind of talk about that partnership and the yin and the yang and how you guys work, man. Cause it's It
Yeah.
reminds me a lot of me and my wife, man. Just feel like a true teammate. I wouldn't trade her for $1 billion. I wouldn't trade her for anything else in the world, man. Like
Yep.
she's mine.
Yep.
I'm never letting go of her, you know, and I know you feel the same way.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, this is the thing. I mean, when you have a good marriage, like it's invaluable. There's nothing more valuable than having a good marriage, right? And like when you see that your marriage is a team and you guys work together, like it is what helps you push through those difficult times, you know? It is what helps you, it's what helps make the enjoyable times more enjoyable, right? Like so absolutely. Like we talk, I wrote a thread a little while back about my son dealing with his anxiety, you know, and like I never would have made it through. There's no way I would have made it through dealing with my son's anxiety without my wife. And the same thing, dude, she never would have made it through. So if we get into an argument or we get into a fight or a disagreement, there's never a question of like, oh, we're going to get divorced. Oh, this isn't going to end. It's always, we are going to push through this. This is a bump in the road. We're going to continue. This is going to make us stronger. We're going to be better people as a result of this. Like, and you know, we have and this is one of the benefits of marrying someone who has, I have deeply held beliefs. She has the same deeply held beliefs. I can speak for her and almost never say something that she doesn't agree with because our beliefs line up, right? Yeah. Like I'm in public talking with my friends and I talk for my wife. This is what we say. This is what we believe. And she stands behind me because it is what we believe. So, and this is the thing.
Intentional choice as you guys have journeyed through marriage to kind of come together, come closer and kind of carve out that time. Cause you guys got a lot of kids like us too, man. So I know that's not an easy thing because if you don't prioritize that and make that a big thing where I always say God in the center and then us together and everything else will take care of itself if we prioritize that. But what do you guys kind of do to keep that alive and keep on the same page and keep growing value-wise together? Because you see so many marriages that don't.
Yeah. So one is we put our kids to bed early.
Amen. We do too. 7:30, y'all are done, man. We put in our work.
Yep. I have a video on appropriate bedtime routines for your kids, and my kids go to bed at 7:00, dude. My kids go to bed at 7:00, and that's because my wife and we have to have time together in the evening. Like if I'm falling asleep by like 9:00. You know what I mean? So yes. If my kids were up till 8:30 or my kids were up to 9, then I probably wouldn't see my wife very much, you know, like, even though now it's different because I work from home, right? And she's home. So I see my wife a lot more, like more now than ever. So that's great. Like we go out and, let's go have lunch together. And we go out and have lunch. Like it's never been easier than to have date time together because we're home together all the time now. But definitely prior to this, it was the kids go to bed at 7. That way we can make sure that we spend time together in the evening. So that was like the golden hour. Like if we couldn't get anything, it would be between like 7:30 and 8:30 or 9. Right? That would be the time that we had together. So it had to be set apart. And I did as much as I could. It would have been great to have date nights every single week, but we just couldn't swing that. So it was about every 2 weeks or, you know, something right there. Like we made it a goal to make it happen. And sometimes it did and didn't, but we tried to prioritize that. But we also are constantly trying to teach our kids, you know? And so in there, we are instilling our values in our kids. So even now we make time for each other by going on walks. We go on 2 walks a day. We go on 2 walks a day and there's no phone on the walk. We just talk to each other. And I don't plan any phone calls on the walk. I don't plan to do anything. It's just us on that walk. So walks are a big one. Time after the kids go to bed are a big one. And then making time for family dates are a big one. But, I'll even sacrifice sleep in order to spend time with my wife because that time with her is invaluable, you know? So, and then I don't know where this fits into, but my wife really likes me to read her to sleep. So sometimes if she has a hard time falling to sleep, then we have some chairs set up in the room and I'll just read to her, you know, pick a book and read it to her. And then like I don't know, my voice is so soothing and so masculine that she just, dozes off and gets the best night of sleep ever.
I
So
love that, man. But I think you're so wise in that where you have to carve out that time. We've gotten a little flack from people. Oh, you put your kids to bed at 7:30. Yes, we need an hour and a half to ourselves. And you know what? If the kids do stay up later, then you need to get up and not use them as an alarm clock and maybe have coffee together or something where you're connecting every day. So it's not just, hey, did you do the trash? Hey, did you pack the lunch? Hey, did you take the kids here? It's a transactional relationship instead of an intentional one at that
Yep.
point,
It becomes logistical. Yep. It becomes logistical. Yep. And I probably don't do as many like romantic things as I should. I probably should do more, but I do try to write my wife a note every once in a while, and she'll write me notes and stuff like that, where it just, mainly I would say like the modern day is we text each other. Like if she's out, we text, and they can get a little graphic sometimes, which is great. But I think that is more of like the modern day, like leave a note on the desktop. So I'm in communication with her all the time. I think the way I have my phone set up is my phone only gives me notifications from her. So if you have an iPhone, what you have to do is you can turn your notifications on and then just go turn notifications off for everybody except for her. So my phone will only interrupt me if she's trying to get a hold of me. And she's the most important person. I don't want to miss a text from her or a call from her. Yeah.
Cheat code right there, man. I'm gonna be doing that right after this pod. I like that, man. Because there's a lot of times where I have focused work where I just put my phone in the other room, but then I'm sure it might be frustrating for my wife. She's trying to get a hold of me during that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And I do that sometimes, but I'll actually just tell her, hey, my phone's in the other room. If you're trying to get a hold of me, you won't reach me. So then she knows, like, hey, all right, he's not ignoring me. It's in the other room.
Yeah. Well, as a guy who, I think we were both in a similar phase. You mentioned it was a strain on your marriage early on. And me and my wife, man, we were at a point where we were saying the D word a little bit until we got really intentional with some of these things. And now, I look at last night, we put the kids to bed. We did some breath work together, turned out the lights, hung out, and this is a common thing now. And I've really come to the conclusion for me that if I have to lose it at some friendships, maybe, or I have to say no and have these healthy boundaries a lot, I'm going to win at my marriage above all else. Right. Like whatever that means. Did you kind of have a come to God moment in that as well? Or,
it was mainly for like, cause when I wasn't working, we would always prioritize our marriage. Like I wanted to have kids at a young age. Like I wanted to get married young, and it was all about the family. It was for us. The biggest thing was the work taking time away. But to your point, we do say no to a lot of stuff because people will invite us to go places or do things. And it's like, that's not conducive for us, right? That keeps our kids up past their bedtime. And then that's going to keep us up. And then that's going to mess up the whole flow of how our life works, So we say no to a lot of stuff in order to keep that time period that we can,
Sacred,
So even when I had my job, I would make sure that I was always home in time to put the kids to bed, no matter what, and I might be super tired and it might be hard for me to spend more time with my wife in the evening, but like, that's a key element to make sure the kids are getting to bed on time. So in that sense, yeah, even currently, my friends are like, the Reeves family doesn't do anything fun. That's the way, because they're like, they take their kids out and they're watching, Marvel movies up till like 9 o'clock at night, or whatever. And they're playing video games late at night. And it's like, I'm not taking my kids to do that. That's not part of what we do.
Yeah. And not that there's anything wrong with families that do, but for your family, you have what works. For our family, man, we got what works. And I really don't value what anyone else says works in our family outside of me and my wife. Like, I just really don't. I don't care what in-laws say. I don't care what my parents might think. Yes. I really don't. If me and my wife are on the same page and we're putting God first and our family first, the outside noise, I kind of just listen to like learn to tune that out to a certain extent. That's made us pretty successful.
And I will say, when you have a good wife, like the amount of time that you spend with her, sometimes it ebbs and flows, like there's times where my wife is going through hard things in life with her family, with her friends, something happens. And like, I have to spend more time with her. Like, I have to talk with her. We have to process through life events together and talk about them. So there's some times where I'll just ask my parents to babysit so that I can get more time with my wife because I don't have enough. Like, so I try to look at the seasons of life, and sometimes you're in seasons where, okay, you don't spend as much time together, and that's cool. It's only in the evening or whatever. But I think if we don't do that, then we neglect having the best life that we can, because I mean, there's hard things that we go through in life. And if you don't process them and talk about them, well, something happened with my wife and one of her friends, and it was like really hard on her, and like she needed a lot of time to herself, which means I had to step up and do more. Yeah. And then she needed time to talk to me, So like I had to carve that out of my day and work later and like mess up my schedule in order to make that happen to where I could spend the time with her, So I don't see it. It's not like linear, you know what I mean? It's not like, oh, you're spending X amount of time like this all the time. And no, I mean, just like everything else, right? Like your strength isn't linear. It goes up and down. Like, I mean, everything else in life, I think even your relationship, the amount of time that you spend together, it's not linear, Yeah,
it's good to be mindful of that, I think, and know that some seasons you like you said, you just have to show up, put in the reps, get that hour at night and connect. And then other seasons you have a lot more, right? We have 3 1-year-olds right now. So me and my wife are already talking about in 18 months, we're counting it down. They're all going to be in school. We're going to have 5 or 6 hours a day together. Already counting that down. Can we talk a little bit about kids and things like that? Because man, some of your threads, and I'm going to post everything that Reeves does. I'm going to link all of his stuff below. This guy's an amazing writer. He does, ghost writing for people as well too, and help with threads and things like that. Right. So I'm going to link all that below, but some of your threads just knock me off my feet, man. I have many of them bookmarked, and even when my kids get to a certain age, I'm going to go back and read a lot of those. I think you have so much wisdom in those. Can you kind of talk around a couple of those threads, man?
Yeah.
The one was the sex talk with your kids. I loved that one. And then some of the different just routines and structures that your family does. I know you're big on allowing your kids to feel like they have a lot of choice, but ultimately you kind of still have the choice. Can you talk about that a little bit too?
Yeah, man. Yeah. So that sex thread was a really good one, man. It was, I will say that everything that's on my Twitter, like, is birthed from my heart. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing that's like, there's nothing that's fabricated. I don't make anything up. Like everything is like, it comes from within me. You know what I mean? And it's
that's
like,
why you're successful on there too.
I gotta put this out, people have to read it,
Yeah.
So that it's what's amazing. I wrote that sex thread in about, I think 30 minutes or 35 minutes because like it was welling up inside of me and like, it just had to get out, but that one, everybody should read that thread. So it was birthed out of the fact that my parents taught me nothing about sex. Dude, what the heck, man? Like, sex has been around since the beginning of time. And my parents
learn about sex from pornography nowadays, right? Like that's how most kids are learning about it. And that when I really read your thread and started thinking about that, I remember being 10 years old and a buddy showed me a Playboy, and that was the first time that I'd really thought about it. And then I started discovering on my own. And like, I don't want my children to have to go through that.
Yes.
To figure these things out on their own,
Yes.
Yes. Behind it.
So, okay. So that thread was written out of that, dude. It was written out of my parents taught me nothing. And so what I thought was, before my kids were born, I'm like, okay, my parents didn't teach me this. I'm teaching this to my kids. How is it that I'm going to teach this to my kids? Right. So then I took that process of how do I teach this to my kids and then put that into a thread. But ultimately, like, I grew up at, I don't know, it's like we're the millennials. I'm a millennial. The millennials are one of the few people to grow up basically having the internet like from birth to death, So for me, I grew up, my parents taught me nothing about sex, and then they gave me internet access. And I don't even know if it crossed their mind, like in the beginning, like, dial-up internet, they're not even thinking like pornography.
Yeah.
That's what I think,
A 16-year-old kid sure was though, right?
Yeah. So I found pornography, which is a bad thing. And it ruined my life for many years. But I didn't know, but I still didn't know any. Like I remember being in middle school and one of my friends was like, hey, Timothy, are you a virgin? And like, I didn't even know what it meant to be a virgin. I didn't know what that word means. I don't know. I was like, no. like, like, is it, I'm thinking to myself, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Should I be one or shouldn't I be one? You know? So I'm like I've lived this, you know, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want my kids to live this. I don't want my kids to go through this, you know? So that's where that thread came from. And basically, like, you know, I mean, it starts all with teaching your kids their body parts, right? Like basic step number one before you teach them about sex is teaching them about their body. So like point number one is basically like, hey, you teach your kids about your hands, you teach them about their feet, their eyes, their ears. Well, make sure you teach them about their private parts, right? And that kind of sets the stage later for teaching them about sex. And then the step number two is teaching them about animals, and that animals have sex. Animals are having babies, right? And so I would show my kids videos of animals giving birth, right? So it would be like, I'd be just be chilling on the couch and I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm going to look up animal giving birth. And there's like plenty of them online of like giraffes giving birth and horses giving birth and cows giving birth. They're like all over the place, which would have been commonplace, right? Prior to the modern age. Like most people, 100 years ago?
My mom grew up on a farm. This was probably an everyday thing, right?
They grew up with animals giving birth all the time, you know? But for us, it's like distance. Like, you know, the kids don't put those connections. Yeah. So I would just show my kids these videos, and that would be the way that I would introduce them. Oh, look, the baby's in her belly. The baby's coming out of her belly. The baby's coming out of her private parts. And just like the introductory, like thought process of getting into sex before actually having the sex, having to talk about sex. Yeah. So, and then of course at some point you have to decide, all right, I'm going to talk to my kids about sex. Like you can't let the world educate them. Right. If you leave it up to movies, if you leave it up to their friends, oh my gosh, it's going to be bad, because these kids have no idea what they're talking about. And they're going to be taught all kinds of crazy stuff. You don't leave it up to the school system. It's vital that you tell them. And is it an easy conversation to have? No, it's not an easy conversation to have, but you need to have it, and you need to be open with your kids about it so that they can know and they can understand. Like, so they're not blindsided by the world and being consumed, right? Being consumed with it, because it's already a sex-filled society, right? So I decided to have the conversation with my kids, because one of my boys said to my wife, he said, hey, Mom, when I wake up, my private parts are hard. And she was like, your dad's going to talk to you about that one.
Yeah, go talk to your father, right?
Right. So then I was like, okay, they're aware, they're sensing their body, you know, so let's have this conversation. So then, I mean, I openly had the conversation with them. We were on vacation after I'd quit my job, actually. And we were chilling in the hot tub. And I said, hey, which one of you talked to Mom or asked Mom about your private parts being hard? I did. Okay, well, we're going to talk about that, right? So then we dive into the conversation, and I didn't expose them to the evils, right? I didn't expose them to strip clubs and prostitutes and pornography and sex trafficking, right? Because they're 9 years old, they're 10 years old, right? We're just kind of like wrapping our mind around that sex exists, right? And then what it is, you know? And so it's just the introductory, like, hey, this exists in the world. It's called sex. When you have sex, now you're no longer a virgin, right? Before, these are the body parts. This is what happens. This is how babies are made. God intended this to be this way, to perpetuate the society and to provide pleasure for the husband and wife, right? All this is something that's supposed to be functioned within marriage. A married couple are supposed to have it. Mm-hmm. And then down the road, a little bit later, when my kids get older, we'll talk more about the dangers of it, right? The pornography that exists, the OnlyFans, sex trafficking, right? All that stuff is going to come later. But it's like all of that was birthed out of like, oh man, my parents did a number on me by not teaching me about any of it.
Yeah, I love that you know, this side of Twitter I found. You said it's not an easy conversation. It's hard. It is a hard conversation as a parent, I'm sure. You know, my kids aren't quite to that age yet. So still got a ways, thankfully. We're still just playing peekaboo right now, mostly. But
Yeah.
I do think that as a whole, our society kind of ignores that, and they ignore the dangers of pornography, the destruction that's done to families. And that could be a whole different podcast. But yeah, I'm glad to see men like you and other people kind of leading the way in that, to, hey, it's a healthy thing. We can talk about it openly. It doesn't need to be this taboo subject that you just, oh, I don't know, go ask your friend Johnny. He's got an older brother. Like we don't need to be like that. We need to be talking about God designed it for a reason in marriage. It's a beautiful thing between a man and a wife. It can also be bad if you use it this way, just like money is an evil tool. If you use it poorly, your phone, anything else, right?
Yep.
I love the way you break it down, man. And I appreciate that. Can you talk quickly about how you give your kids choice? And that was a really good strategy that I've really liked that you spoke on, but they kind of make the decisions, but you kind of make the decisions.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So as, I want my kids to be empowered as much as possible. Right. I know that, Anthony, he's Peaceful Fathers on, Twitter. He talks about this, a lot as well, but I'm not trying to create robots. Yeah. I'm not trying to create robots at all. I don't want my kids to just be like, oh, dad said this, we have to do it. I can't ever question what my dad says, So, but I also am not going to step away and no longer be their authority figure or their father figure or their leader, So usually, instead of just setting hard guidelines for stuff, I like to give my kids choice. So it's between one thing or another thing. So there's still two things that I pick, right? And I think you're probably referring to when it's time to leave. That's a big thing that I do with my kids is, hey, do you want to leave in 15 minutes or do you want to leave in 20 minutes?
Yep.
Either way, we're leaving. Yeah. I've decided that we're leaving.
Yep.
So I'm just going to give you this illusion of choice of oh, I want to leave in 15 minutes. And I want my kids to have as much buy-in to the things that they do as possible. So when they say, let's leave in 15 minutes, then they're bought into it, right? Yeah. I want to leave in 15 minutes. And to be fair, it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes they say, I don't want to leave. I'm like, hey, you want to leave in 15 minutes or 30 minutes? They're like, we don't want to go at all. And I'm like, sorry, we are going to go. So,
yeah.
But I try to be intentional about that stuff, and even with dinner time, they have a choice, I put the food before them and they get a choice to eat what's before them or not eat what's before them, or to eat as much as they want of what's before them and have seconds and more, right? Those choices are there.
Yeah.
And I didn't always do that with my kids, but so that's what I try to do. Even when we work out, I go into the garage with them. I'm like, hey, what workouts do you want to do today? I don't tell them, all right, you have to do these exercises with me. I want it to be fun and enjoyable for them. So I let them pick, right? I give them the options, but I do curb it, right? My son's like, I want to carry this 40-pound weight around the block. And I'm like, nah, we're not doing that. We're going to do something else.
Yeah.
So you want to pick this or this? You want to do an obstacle course, or do you want to go on the rowing machine, right? Yeah. So that's the kind of way I want to, as much as possible, give my kids choices and options so that they have the ability to be empowered, right? Yeah. And then I want to listen to them. If they say, I don't want to do any of that, I want my ears to perk up, because usually I give them options of things that they want to do. And if they're like, I don't want to do any of that, to me, that's kind of a sign, oh, what's going on, man? How come you don't want to do any of this stuff? Let's have a conversation about this. Yep.
That's awesome, man. So much wisdom behind that. I stole it this morning from you, brother, because my daughter, we have a day, she has a day off school, a couple days next week. And so we're planning a fun daddy-daughter date. And I gave her 3 options. I had all of them planned out. And I said, hey, I'm going to give you, do you want to go hiking and then to this restaurant and then get ice cream after? Do you want to go to the strip and ride the Ferris wheel? I gave her a bunch of these options, and then she was really excited and picked one and gave me a big hug. So thanks, man. I appreciate it. I use that strategy. It's pretty sweet.
It's a good way to go. Yeah. And then because kids, they ebb and flow, right? They want to do one thing one day and another thing another day. Yeah. So it's even better. Yeah. And even when I tell them hey, do you want to leave in 15 minutes or 10 minutes? They're like, I want to leave now. All right, well, that's cool. I'm happy to leave now. Let's go now.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, Reeves, I could probably talk to you for 10 hours today, man, but I know we both got kids and other things to do. So I always get to the last part of my podcast, man, where I call them top 5 rapid fire questions. I'm going to fire off 5 quick questions for you. Just give me the first thing that comes to your mind, brother. All right.
Okay.
All right, man. What's your go-to easy meal that you cook for the family often? Because I know you cook for the fam.
Oh shoot. uh breakfast.
You have breakfast for dinner?
Eggs, yeah.
I do
Eggs
too.
and
We do that a lot.
eggs and sausage and bacon, yeah.
You can't go wrong with that, man. What's your morning routine look like, Reeves?
Oh shoot. Okay, so I typically wake up at 4, and then I will usually walk or go on my rower from about 4 to 5. And then from 5 to 6, I'll read, usually read the Bible and pray or some type of meditation. And then from 5 to, and then my friend comes and works out with me at 6 o'clock.
Nice.
So I walk, read my Bible, pray, and then work out at 6. And then usually my kids are up at about 6:15, 6 o'clock ish. And then we have breakfast together at about 6:30 or 7.
That's awesome, brother. That's by the time your kids wake up, dad's already filled up, man. He's already read the Bible. He's already journaled. He's already prayed. He's already worked out. That's the way to do it, man.
Dude, it's bad, man. If you stay up late and you miss that, I'm in trouble, man. I tell
my wife that a lot. Like there was a few days when I first became self-employed where I like just let the kids wake me up, and I was an anxious stress ball all day. Even if I just 15 minutes, I got to get up and have my time before the family. I always tell her that, man. That sets the intention behind everything.
Yep. I mean, I won't go back. I'll never go back to probably waking up late unless I really have like zero responsibilities and it's like just vacation. I can sleep into whenever, but no, I mean, usually even on vacation, I try to get up an hour before everybody else,
Have your time. Yeah. It's important, man. Dads need that. Who's your favorite character in the Bible, perhaps that you relate the most to, or that you've drawn a lot of inspiration from?
Oh man, it has to be Paul. Paul wrote most of the New Testament. And like, I feel like his words are just like ingrained in me the most. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Yeah, quite a journey, man. I look forward to getting to talk to him someday, man. That'll be neat.
Yeah.
What's the best relationship tip you can share? I guess you kind of already have alluded to this in some way, but just best thing that you and your wife do.
Dude, you know what? It has to be communication. Communicating with your wife on a regular basis. I mean, that's it. I think that date nights are great, but really nothing can substitute regular communication with your wife. Like I remember going to work and I'd have friends, they wouldn't talk to their wife at all while they were at work, right? They wouldn't text her, they wouldn't call her. And I'm like, what the heck are you doing? No wonder you guys are fighting all the time. Like my wife is constantly texting me like, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. Because you live in a fluid relationship, especially with kids, right? Like the kids have ebbs and flows. And she's your outlet to let this out at. Like, I struggle with the kids. This happened and this happened and this happened. And like, you're not communicating with her. She's just bundling that up, or she's sharing it with somebody else. Right.
Yeah.
So I absolutely communication, whether it's text, whether it's phone calls, Skype, Zoom, whatever you have to do, like make sure that you're communicating on a regular basis. Yeah.
100%, man. Even tonight, we have a babysitter coming over for 2 hours, Reeves, and all we're going to do is take a walk together for 2 hours. Yeah. That's what we're going to do, man. Just communicate. It's a big thing, man. If you prioritize that relationship, you'll learn to communicate, right?
Yep.
What's your favorite book, non-Bible, my man?
Gaining Favor with God and Man.
I never heard of that one. Who wrote that?
William Thayer. It's a really old book. Like it's kind of like a book of almost like a book of Proverbs. Every chapter's short, but it'll be a chapter on like scripture, and it'll just be like maybe 2 pages about it. But it's kind of like old English. It's kind of a hard book to find, to be honest with you.
Really?
You might be able to find it on Amazon, but it's like all golden wisdom, dude. It's all golden. Like every page is like, I mean, it's like the original like quick content, like Twitter. It's like a what's the word I'm looking for? Like it is like the self-improvement book that the other self-improvement books like
model after,
birthed after. Yeah, like all of his wisdom in there, you can just find it in all the other people that came after him. Yeah, William Thayer, Gaining Favor with God and Man. Yep.
Awesome, man. I'll have to check that one out. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's something where I always say that God was the original tweeter, man. With Proverbs, it's just fire tweets that can improve your life, man.
It is. Yeah, Proverbs is the original And then there's threads too, right? Like
That's
like
right.
chapter
Exactly
chapter
right,
5
man.
is a thread, chapter 31 is a thread. Yeah,
Yes.
like there's sections that are communicating. Yep,
Yep.
threads. That's right.
I appreciate you so much coming on, dropping a lot of wisdom and sharing a lot of insights with us, man. You have to come on again because I feel like you're a man that, like, when we left, all the guys from our retreat, man, I felt like it was, I could have just sat there for months, man, with all you guys and soaked in more and more wisdom. I love you to death, Reeves. I love seeing you grow and your mission grow, man.
Yeah.
I check it. You're getting to that 10,000 range too. I'm really happy about that, man. Anybody
Yeah,
watching
dude.
this, go give Reeves a follow on Twitter. I'm going to link all of his stuff below, man. Instagram, his writing, check out some of his threads. You'll be a huge fan right away. But thank you so much for coming on today, brother. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
This has been Tyromper's No Limits podcast, episode number 17 with Mr. Timothy Reeves. Thanks, you guys, for tuning in. Please like and subscribe to the channels. That helps us out a lot. We'll be getting a couple of guests on later. One is coming on next week. We got Mr. Zach Small, who's coming on next, leader of Fraternity of Excellence, and another guy that Reeves and I connect with as well. So thank you guys for tuning in. Go have a blessed day. Go bless somebody else today. Have a great one.